Welcome back to the Victory Podcast. I'm your host, Steve McGrath, and this week I'm pleased to bring you my conversation with Otis Grigsby. Now, Otis was an All-State linebacker coming out of high school in Texas, and then he went to the University of Kentucky, where he switched to defensive end, and from 2003 to 2009, he battled to make NFL rosters, going from team to team, and he took the time to walk us through all that and what he's done since then, where he got a law degree and now he's had his hand in a couple of different things, had some other experience outside of the game. So Otis breaks it all down. And before we get to it, I need to remind you all that we're brought to you by Team Builder. Now, Team Builder works with over 500 high school football programs nationwide, as well as the NFL. So whether you have a program, you're looking to change things up, go to the website, check them out. And if you use the promo code VICTORY, you're going to get a free gift. So go there. But until then, check out our conversation with Otis. 2, 1, boom. On the line, I am pleased to be joined by Otis Grigsby. Otis, how are you doing today?
All right. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing phenomenal. And just before we jumped on here, we were about to jump into the Myles Garrett debacle of last night in the Browns-Steelers game.
Yeah.
What was he thinking? I mean, you've been there. I mean, you've been in the moment. You understand the heat of that moment, what it could be like. But how do you let it get to that level?
So my first reaction was, okay, Myles Garrett has lost his mind. But then when I found out that Mason Rudolph tried to take his helmet off, then I had a different thought about it. And, the thing is, defensive linemen generally wear their helmets pretty tight on. Like, you can't have it loose like a quarterback or a skill player. So when someone tries to pull your helmet off, it feels like they're trying to rip your head off. I mean, it's a full-on, it's a next-level attack. I mean, I had a guy do that to me in my freshman year in college, and my response was pure rage. I mean, I think that was the first time. So it was on kickoff. I go down on kickoff. I try to pull a little juke move to get by this guy, and he kind of hits me on my shoulder, and I spin and hit the ground, and then this guy gets on my back and starts trying to pull my helmet off. And it felt like he was trying to rip my head off, and
Yeah.
it was infuriating. So I went on the sideline, I'm kind of like tearing up. I was so mad. And my coach, my D-line coach, he was just like, he's super intense. He's like, "Are you effing ready? Like, you ready to get in there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." and he put me in the game, and it was like a sack, forced fumble, I think, and we recovered it for a touchdown, like won the game. Like, and I was just still like filled with rage. So, to do something like that, I think it's taking it to another level. And so after he he, meaning Mason Rudolph, went for Miles's helmet, and then Miles pulls his helmet off, and then the lineman comes over and separates them, and then Mason Rudolph goes on the attack while Miles is being held back by a guy who's 100 pounds heavier than him. Now he's got like this additional Superman strength. The swing was like inappropriate, but like that's literally the free hand he had, and
Yep.
you have to defend yourself while you got one guy here and another guy coming at you. I think he should be suspended, but like all the talk about should he be kicked out of the NFL, should
Overblown,
Mason
in
Rudolph
my opinion.
sue him, all this stuff, like no. They've got rules in place for when a player attacks another player with a helmet. It's happened. I think they should just be clear-eyed with it and move on. But it was entertaining, I guess, and a little sad.
One detail too is Mason Rudolph put a foot between that guy's legs in between all this too. So he hit him in a couple key areas that they're going to get a pretty negative response.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know that either. So that even
I don't think it was a kick so much as it was like an extension for leverage. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's like your foot ended up there, and that's not going to make anyone happy.
Every man on earth knows that that's an escalation that is unnecessary unless I don't know, your life is in danger.
I know, but like the game's over too, so it's just like craziness. Well, all that nonsense aside, you also get a look at this from a lawyer's perspective too. So you don't see any sort of legal action being taken.
I mean, I guess he could, but and I think that there's actually a case that, and I don't remember the case name, but we went over this in torts my first year, and it's this idea that you really, when you go into a football game, you are essentially accepting a certain amount of violence. There's a certain expectation. Obviously, it can rise to a level that goes beyond what you signed up for, and bringing it to some type of offense that can be prosecuted or you can sue someone over. But man, in this case, I don't think you can say Myles Garrett was trying to kill anyone. I don't think he definitely didn't do. You could say, well, he could have hurt him, but that's why there's a rule in place about helmets, which is something that's anticipated. Like, we've seen guys use helmets as a weapon before. I mean, generally a helmet is a weapon when it's even secured on your head. So I don't know. And a guy attacking you while you've got someone else on you, it feels like it would go nowhere, and it would be a huge distraction to the team. So I expect this thing to just kind of go away. But you never know.
Yeah. And I hope it does too. It's over. As Bill Belichick would say, we're on to the next week.
Yeah, make the drill.
Yeah. Well, Otis, what I'd love to do is sort of bring this back because, before you get a chance to play in the NFL or play collegiately, you're just a high school kid like everyone else. But you weren't just a high school kid. I mean, you were all-state linebacker in Texas, which, they do a pretty good job of producing NFL talent there. But, basketball player, football player. What was it like for you, from what you remember, just sort of deciding, did you want to pursue football versus basketball? And, how ultimately do you get to Kentucky?
Yeah, how did I decide which one? Well, number one, I wasn't really that good at basketball, so that made it easier. I grew up, playing baseball, loved baseball, wanted to, be a member of the Atlanta Braves someday. I grew up watching guys like Chipper Jones and Andrew Jones and Fred McGriff and David Justice, and just like, wanted to be on that team. Baseball didn't work, and it's an unfortunate situation where one of my high school football coaches, he was like our linebackers coach, but he wasn't really, the guy. Like our head coach was he was an All-American linebacker in college, so he really kind of ran the whole thing with linebackers. But this linebackers coach was also he was also the head coach for the baseball team, and he told me going into my junior year, he told me don't come out for the varsity team the next year because I won't make it. And it was really weird because I had just made the JV team in the first day of tryouts. Those 4 days, made the JV team. Was pretty good. It wasn't like, amazing or all world or whatever, but so that kind of like ended. So really football, it was just kind of like a natural progression. And I think, just kind of thinking about, when I tell kids and I tell parents about, sports, a lot of times people try to predict like, what their kid's going to be good at. And just because your kid's good at baseball, like for me, I was elevated to the majors and I skipped minors in baseball. So I went from T-ball to manager's pitch to majors. Someone might look at that and say, oh, well, we have to make him a baseball player. We need to just like get him into all the camps and do all the stuff. And that wasn't the best move. And ultimately, the best thing to do is just keep playing all the sports, keep developing all those skills, and keep your body healthy and not get burnt out on the sport until something really clicks and it's apparent. And for me, when it became apparent was that I was, that I'm destined to play football, even though I didn't care about football before the 7th grade. And you could argue that I didn't care that much about it even in the 7th grade, but it was a moment when our first string strong side linebacker, or no, weak side linebacker, we ran a 5-2 defense. His mom signed him up for driver's ed, and he's a great linebacker, but he wasn't able to go through spring ball. She said, I've already paid the money, so you're going to driver's ed. And that defense doesn't run very well if you don't have a good linebacker in, and the backup wasn't very good. So it was a struggle for a couple of days. Coaches asked me to step in, and at the time I was playing nose guard. at about, 6'4", 210 pounds, good enough for all district, but definitely not good enough to play in college or pro. And but the moment they moved me to linebacker, it was something happened. It was like, wow, this guy, this is where he belongs. There were scouts out there at our practices, and when they saw me, they were just like, hey, son, we need to talk. You got something here. And that was the first time a scout had ever paid attention to me. And so we went from spring ball to the season, my senior season, and we just killed it. Like, we had the best rush defense like in the Texas high school football history. Like, I had 173 tackles. My counterpart at strong side linebacker had 193 tackles. Like, we were just dominating people. It was so much fun. And, so those opportunities kind of came naturally, but never would I have imagined that, football would be something that would take me to the college level. And then, just even getting to college, that's a whole, you're hitting the restart button. And a lot of guys think they're going to walk in and, everything's gonna be handed to them, and they're so used to people telling them, "Oh, you're the best. Like, you're number one." And I mean, the coaches and the scouts, I mean, they tell you the same thing. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna play. You're everything. We love you." Like, and that's not what happens. You come in, you want your number, your jersey number from high school, and it's like, "Nah, sorry, someone else has it." And then it's like, "Well, I want to play." And like, actually, we're gonna redshirt you. Yeah, never mind what we told you when we were sitting in your living room with your parents and your grandparents and your family, all that. We're going to do things differently. And that's a tough deal, but yeah, that's like maybe a long answer to your question, but yeah.
No, not at all. But ultimately, what was it about Kentucky? What was their pitch to you? What was it, just how you felt about them, their program? Like, what was it about it that had that path come together for you?
Yeah, Kentucky. So, couple of things. One, Kentucky at the time, and I believe it's still a good school, but I don't know what their numbers are. At the time, they were graduating around 96% of their football players, which meant a whole lot to me. So we looked at the other schools that were high on my list. Nebraska, I don't remember what their numbers were, but it wasn't as good. A&M at the time, it was something abysmal, like around 41%. There were other schools in the Big 12. Texas didn't want me, but it wasn't because they didn't want me. It was just they didn't have any scholarships available. At the time, Mac Brown offered scholarships to guys coming into their junior year. And so it was just, it was too late. And they were like, well, hey, maybe you can walk on. So number one, it was the academics. Number two, it was the opportunity to play in the SEC. And, Kentucky was okay. At the time, you had Tim Couch there, but a lot of people said, well, why would you want to go to Kentucky if Tim Couch is leaving? And it's like, well, I want to be a part of like building something new, something special. And I also want to play. And I also want to play in the best conference. I mean, it's still the best conference, which says a lot. And then the other thing, really, it was these coaches are very impatient. I mean, our high school, we had a policy of we're not going on any official visits until the season is over. And so all these people are sending you all these letters, and they've got girls decorating them with all these colors, and it's really cool and it's super flattering. But like, you read them and it's like, nice, and then you put them in a drawer because we've got work to do. We're trying to win a state championship. I don't care about any of that other stuff. And then you talk to the coaches on the phone, and they're like, well, hey, son, we really want you, to come up here and see what we've got going on. It's like, that is not how you sell. Like, all you're doing is telling me what you want, and I'm telling you what I want, right? Like, I want to win a championship. I had coaches tell me, oh, it's too hard to win a championship in Texas. There's no like, you know how hard it is to actually get to the state championship. I mean, there's so many teams, like, it's impossible. Like, this is all we work for. And the reason why you like me as a player is because I'm so focused on this thing. And now you want me to just like change my focus and say, screw my teammates, and then come up to, Nebraska or wherever for a weekend so you can feed me and all this stuff. It's like, no, we have a job to do. And it made sense to me because most of the guys on our football team are not going to play in college. So that's a distraction. So I'm honoring my coach's wishes, and they didn't like that. And a lot of teams kind of just dropped off. They said things like, "Oh, we want a guy that wakes up in the morning knowing he wants to be an Aggie," or, "We don't feel like Nebraska's your number one." And I'm like, Nebraska is my number one. And back then, Nebraska was really good. It's like I wanted to be a black shirt. I wanted to, go out there and be a part of the wrecking crew. But it just they were impatient, and I put my teammates, my priorities, my commitments over any personal things that I think is going to be more beneficial to me, and that's just part of like being a team player. That's why I love football. So yeah, that's
Definitely.
how I got to Kentucky, and the people
Now,
are really nice there too. So yeah.
um, you do though in college. You switch from linebacker to defensive end. Was that something that was more at 6'4"? You just had the frame that you could make that transition. How did that come about? Was that something that they kind of told you up front, or was that more of like a natural evolution as you grew into your body?
Yeah. So did I have the frame for it? No. I mean, I really didn't even have the frame for linebacker in college, right? So coming in, I was 215. I played hard. Like I sacrificed my body. I filled gaps and just destroyed whatever was in it. And that's the way I played. I mean, not a whole lot of like great technique. Probably if I kept playing linebacker like that, my brain wouldn't work as well right now. But no, the way I ended up getting that opportunity to play defensive end was we were playing Florida. I believe it was like week 4 of my freshman year, and they needed someone to mimic Alex Brown on a scout team. And I like at the time I was second string middle linebacker, so a lot of guys would look at that as like a demotion or some type of slight, like, oh, you're gonna put me on a scout team. But like they couldn't think of anyone else who had the same motor, so they threw me in there. And I went out there and just destroyed our offensive line, pretending to be Alex Brown. And they're like, you know what, let's just get him in the game at defensive end. So, you go out there, you take advantage of opportunities, and you find a way to get on the field. And that's basically what I did. I had guys on my team, and this, this happened in high school as well and junior high, I guess, but complaining like, oh man, you're going too hard. You need to like ease up. Like, why are you doing this? And it's like, man, because the guy across from you in the game is going to do the same thing and maybe worse. So I'll be your worst enemy during the week, and then you'll be ready for that guy on Friday or Saturday. But yes, so they saw that, put that on tape, and they said, well, yeah, let's get him out there on the field, and that was my opportunity.
Yeah, and it's just funny, right? Because you started by saying, some people look at it as a demotion. That move, however you could have felt about it, good or bad, that move put you on a path where you have the future that you have. If you say no at that time, or which maybe someone else would in your shoes,
Mm-hmm.
what happens? What happens come 2003?
Right. No, it's true. And if you talk to my dad, well, my dad will tell you if they'd never moved me to defensive end, I would have been a first round draft pick at linebacker.
One way to look at it.
I won't dispute that. Like I think 1 year at linebacker, that's all I played was 1 year at linebacker in high school. And if I had 4 years at linebacker in college, yeah, I might have ended up being something, out of this world, off the charts, whatever. But I also think, well, knowing what I know now, linebacker is a dangerous position. I mean, to play the game, like I mentioned it earlier, the way I played it, my body would be broken. I mean, just broken in so many different ways. And I think that, when you think about money, there's so many ways to make money, and money's not everything. I prefer to have my mind intact, my body intact, and be able to add value, for years and years and years. I'm not saying that kids shouldn't play football, because I love football and I don't regret it one bit. But you just don't know what what your path is supposed to be. We have all these ideas of how we think it should be. And, sometimes it's just like, if you just step back for a second and think, like if you think about like where you are now, like you couldn't have predicted, what you've gone through, that you go through all these things in your life and that you'd be where you are now. And there's things about our lives that we like, and there's things about our lives that we'd like to change, but like no one really knew that they'd be where they are. So I can't really, I can't say, well, maybe I should have stayed in linebacker, and maybe I would have like broke my leg and never recovered, and I'd just be like a backup. So you just take your opportunities when they come and you just roll with it.
Absolutely. As I kind of alluded to, in 2003, you end up signing with Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall having any, I'm sure, hopes of getting drafted, but did you have any realistic expectation of you thought that you would? What were you feeling at that time? And, just how did that road to Miami end up coming to be?
Yeah, man. I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder.
It's not hard to imagine.
Yeah, so one, love Kentucky. I don't regret going there. But, the first couple of years, it was difficult. So, well, number one, I never had a real defensive end coach in college. I had a D line coach who was a defensive tackle for a little bit. Then I had a coach who was kind of like a recruiter for a while, but no one who'd ever played defensive end at a high level. So I didn't know what I was doing. And then we also just didn't have a good defense. A lot of playing from behind. You can't get sacks. You can't lead the SEC in sacks if it's always 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. I mean, the quarterback, quick step back, drop the ball off, and you're done. So I felt like I wasn't really getting the recognition that I deserved in so many different ways. I could tell you, oh man. So let's see. Going into my junior year, I was expecting to be the starter. There's no reason why this other guy would like play in front of me, but we had a new D-line coach who never coached D-line before. He'd always been an offensive line coach. And, he wanted to kind of elevate his status. So he told me, well, look, I want to start this other guy in front of you because he's a senior and I want to make sure he gets a chance to make it to the NFL. So we had one defensive end who was a lock going to the NFL for sure. I mean, in the 8th grade, people knew he was going to the NFL, and he did. And then the other one, he's a physical specimen, but he wasn't the same athlete as I was. And, that's a tough thing to hear on its own, but it was even tougher for me because that was following me going through a 5-month rehabilitation coming off of an injury called a Mace Rule fracture, where essentially, and I can't remember which one's the small bone in your lower leg, you break that bone as a result of rolling your ankle. So usually when you roll your ankle, you roll on top of the outside. So I rolled on top of the inside of my foot, and it tore the ligament in my ankle and then broke my bone. Better chance of getting struck by lightning. The doctor comes in and says, we just want to make sure you can walk again. Like that's the goal. That's the target, right? Another guy who had the same injury, North Carolina, played football there. 9 months later, he's walking with a limp, not playing football. So I fought through that 5 months later, and I'm ready to go better than ever. And coach says, yeah, you're going to back this guy up. So I had a chip on my shoulder from that. Little stupid things, right? You go out there, you play hard, you make plays, and there's a marketing process, involved with college football. It's about making money, really. I was not the guy that they picked for any of this stuff. Like they had the poster with all like the best players, and I'm not on it. They're interviewing people. I'm not being interviewed, and I'm not like an attention. I don't need attention, but I also felt like, man, these people just like they don't appreciate me at all. But I'm just gonna just keep working. So coming into the NFL, I wanted a shot. I wasn't a guy who was highly touted, and I thought I could play. And I listened to some really good advice from my agent, Curtis Stevens, who's no longer working as an agent, but the guy that totally believed in me and said, you got to work your hands, you got to work your feet, you got to do all these things. There was a new defensive coordinator that came into Kentucky. I forget his name right now, but he pulled me aside, and I wasn't going to be coached by him, but he pulled me aside and said, "Look, here's what you need to prepare for. You're a tweener. You're not really going to fit in anywhere in the NFL. So the best chance that you can make for yourself is to practice linebacker and defensive end skills, and get ready for for the pro day." And then I got a nice, like, I don't want to say lucky break, but I got a great break when our defensive tackle, who Dwayne Robertson, this guy was like 300 and like 325 pounds. The guy ran like a 4.6 40. I mean, he's a monster. He was drafted like 4th overall. I mean, like we actually ended up getting hit with some recruiting violations because of money that was exchanged between his head coach and some of our recruiters. But so some would say he had no business being in Kentucky. Probably should have been in Alabama, but he didn't go to the combine, and he brought all the scouts to our pro day. So we had
there it is.
every single team at our pro day, and then they had to watch me because I'm working out right next to them. And so I got a couple of guys interested in me, and and you just kind of take it from there. It's like, okay, now they're talking to you, they say things to you like, yeah, we could see you using like a 5th or 6th round pick on you. And to me it's like, oh, okay, someone's gonna draft me. That sounds cool. My agent, he's the clear-eyed guy. I mean, I'm clear-eyed too, but I don't know what I'm doing at the time. And he said, look, they're just telling you that because they want you to like them, so that when they don't draft you, they can come back and say, hey, look, I fought for you. But we'd love it if you'd sign as a free agent. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. And I was so I wasn't drafted. And one team called me on, like, after the draft was over, and they said, look, it was the Dolphins. They were like, hey, look, we know you're disappointed, but we'd like you to come out and try out for the team. And when you're an undrafted free agent, you're a warm camp body. But to me, again, it's an opportunity. Some people pass up that opportunity because they're so upset about what happened, or they feel like that's beneath them to go out there and try to prove their worth to a football team, an NFL team. It's like, well, look, I'm great, and you guys clearly didn't see value in me because you didn't want to draft me. I'm just not going to do this. I took a different approach. I said, look, I'm just going to go out there and just beat the hell out of whoever they put in front of me every single day. That's it. So if it's Deion Dyer, like, one of the best fullbacks I've ever seen, yeah, I'm going to hit this guy as hard as I can every single day and make him respect my authority. So, yeah, it was fun.
So, and you stick with Miami too. So it's not like you're a warm camp body. I mean, you go on to prove that you're worth making that cut. So that first year, even though you didn't get a chance to step out on the field, you're on the roster. And, ultimately it takes you a couple of years before you get a chance to get on the field. So I don't mean to hit the fast forward button too hard here, but it's not until 2006 you get a chance to break on with the Panthers, and it's really 2007 where you really get time on the field. But we're talking 3-4 years.
Yeah.
What can you just talk about the mindset to stay that course where you're getting looks in preseason, but nothing's really working, and I'm sure you have people in your camp that are just like, nope, keep going, keep trying. Maybe there's some people that are just like throwing the towel. You got to move past it. I mean, what sort of noise were you dealing with? And just how did you just continue to fight for that for years until you get your shot?
Yeah, man, it's I would say it's it's like an ultimate head game. Staying on the sideline and getting paid, it's nice at first, and then it's like, this is not what I came here for. and so, there's a lot of negative self-talk that you have to fight through. Um, my own mom told me to quit. She's like, you should just quit. I got cut. So after the Dolphins cut me in my second season, I got picked up by the Falcons. They cut me twice in the preseason. So like they cut me right before training camp started. The day before, I was down in Miami, just kind of like celebrating my freedom. Got a phone call, and it's like, first it was from the Falcons, and then it was from my agent. Missed calls. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And then they brought me back like 2 weeks later, and they cut me again, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, and it was just like, oh man, okay, cool. And then from that, so you're getting less and less film, and that's really how you get, you stay around. There has to be some product on tape that people can use to evaluate you. And going from that to getting picked up by the Panthers, and then they send me to NFL Europe, and I'm like the backup in NFL Europe. Like it's like, okay, I can't even start in NFL Europe, which is, so it's kind of scary. And then something fun happens. I mean, it was kind of crazy, but it was fun for me. The starting defensive end in front of me, great guy, but he kind of had a little bit of a falling out with the head coach in the middle of the game. So it was pretty spectacular. They sent him in the locker room, and then they subsequently sent him home. I took his position, and I came close to leading the league in sacks with like half the games left in the season when I started, and that gave me that kind of boost. And Panthers bring me on, and then they still cut me. It's like, what? So it's like three straight times now I've been cut. And I started thinking about, okay, what I'm going to do, right? I took a job as a substitute teacher, started this business called Big Game Football Academy with one of my friends, and we were teaching like football skills. And I mean, we're doing a great job with these kids. And I mean, I think you know this more than a lot of people, but man, kids have really bad technique, and it's taught to them the wrong way by people who don't know what they're talking about. So
Exactly.
it's dangerous, So we did that, and then I decided, man, I'm just gonna go back to school. I'm gonna finish up school. I'm gonna go get my law degree. I'm gonna be done with football. And then I get a phone call with 2 weeks left in the season, and the Panthers want to bring me down. So they bring me on for the practice squad. And after the season's over, I'm just like, okay, well, John Fox telling us all, hey, we want you here in the off season. Everyone needs to be working hard. Like, it was a tough season into the season, but we're going to come back stronger next year. And I'm freaking out thinking, I'm enrolled in school for this spring semester. I barely got on this team, and now I'm going to have to tell John Fox, I'm not going to be here for off-season training. So I I think a lot of people would just like drop out, but I went up to Coach Fox after that meeting and said, hey, Coach Fox, I fully support what you're saying about, working hard during the off season. I expect to do that, but I'm not going to be here because I have to finish up school. And, I'm a little concerned about that. Like, I want you to know I'm committed. And he's like, dude, I'm not worried about people like you. I'm worried about guys who are going to like sit at home, eating fried chicken and smoking weed. I was like, okay. It's an interesting thing to go to, but yeah, I take your point. And then that kind of just, restarted things. And then, I'm checking in with our strength coach during the off season. I'm working hard with the guys at Kentucky, and I get there, and like during that time, during that off season, a couple things happen. They sign Dave Ball, who's a seasoned veteran, to a free agent deal, pay him some pretty significant money up front to join the team. And then in the draft, they pick up Charles Johnson, who played defensive end for the Panthers for 12 seasons, right? So
yeah, made a bit of an impact there.
Yeah. So everyone's looking at me like, your career here is done, right? And I just went out there and just worked hard, and it was crazy because at the end, when it came down to the final cuts, I had outplayed Charles. Now, Charles obviously has more upside than me. I mean, this guy's a freak of nature, right? But I had outplayed him, and I also had outplayed Dave Ball. And people didn't know what was going to happen. Well, they're not going to cut the third round draft pick, right? So it's really going to be down between me and Dave, and they cut Dave, and it was just like, okay, that's what I expected, but it was kind of scary, and then things just kind of went from there. So yeah, it was really difficult. That's a very unconventional way of getting your first snaps on the field, football field in the NFL. But yeah, you guys just kind of keep pushing until they push you out. So yeah.
No, exactly. But even then, just when it all looks like it's coming together, your time with the Panthers then comes to an end. But then you catch on with the Vikings. So I mean, like this roller coaster ride seemingly has no stops. It's never you're never on just even ground.
Yeah, yeah. The Panthers, and I could have stuck around there, but it felt like, I don't know. They cut me, I think it was week 12 or something like that, week 10 or week 12. Cut me, then they brought me back on practice squad, and they said, "Look, we'll put you back on active roster. We just need to clean up some injury issues with cornerback, but like we love you. You'll be back on active." And like 2 weeks went by, and I was still on practice squad. I'm like, I don't feel very loved right now. And then my agent called me on a Wednesday. I'm getting ready for practice, and he said, "Hey, the Vikings need a defensive end. Do you want the job? It's an active roster spot. Their starting defensive end he just got pinched for PEDs, and it's like, yeah, I want that." So I cut my tape off. I went upstairs, talked to the GM, Marty Herney, and like, "Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity, but I'm out of here." And he was just like, "Well, they don't have to keep you. They only have to keep you for 4 games." I was like, "Well, Marty, there's only 4 games left in the season, so it's guaranteed I'm going to be on an active roster for 4 games. Where here, I don't know when I'm going to get on an active roster. And then once the season's over, you have no guarantees whatsoever. It's reset button." So I made that move, and yeah, it's like go from 55 degrees to 5 degrees. But it was like a real opportunity to play. And yeah, my first game, they threw me in against the 49ers. I got a sack, forced fumble, the only sack I had in my entire career. And it was fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, but you had that moment though. That's
Yeah.
something I'm sure you had chased from the moment you started the journey. So whether it was 10 years in the making or 15 years when you go back to when you're even younger, I mean, at that point you're like, finally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
But I had to ask them because, but by the time you get to Minnesota, you've played just defensive lineman. I mean, you get the Williams guys, Jared Allen. At that point, you've already mentioned Charles Johnson, who got drafted. But I mean, like Mike Rucker, Julius Peppers is on that team. When you were on the Dolphins, I mean, talent everywhere there.
Yeah, Jason Taylor. You had Adewale Ogunleye, Zach Thomas, Junior Seau, Brock Marion. I mean, it was endless talent. It was insane. Yeah, it's hard to get on the field when you got that kind of.
Yeah, it's understandable that you weren't a starter, week in and week out with some of these guys you were playing with. But considering that you made that switch to defensive end in college, I mean, how much were you able to take from like literally some of the best guys to do it in their era to up your game? Were there any particular things you were trying to take from anyone's game and integrate it into your own?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I never had a real defensive end coach.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
college. Jason Taylor became my defensive end coach, and
pretty good guy to learn from.
Yeah, and we always had great D-line coaches. My best one was in Minnesota. Carl. I can't remember his name. I hope he doesn't see this. Totally forgetting his last name right now. I can see his face. He's like one of the best coaches I've ever had. I mean, the guy is a technician, knows his stuff, and he played at a high level as well. So, but Jason Taylor was the one that taught me the long arm. My arms, like he's taller than me, so I'm 6'4", he's 6'6", And, this guy played mid-season for him. He's like probably about 235 pounds. They had him listed at 265. It's a lie. And he was just destroying his competition. Now, a lot of that was due to the fact that, well, he's just a freak of nature as far as talent goes. But he also had training in Taekwondo from when he was like, 5 or something like that, which meant that he could get people off balance really easily. And so he combined his long arms. His arms, you couldn't touch him if he's going like this. How do you get hands on a guy like that? And then when he's coming at you straight forward, well, this guy can juke you out of your shoes before you know it, and then you're on your butt. So I just learned from him, and other guys like Julius Peppers. He's a great talent, but like I look at Julius Peppers as he's just more of a freak of nature, right? Like he just had I can't emulate Julius Peppers. Like the guy was 305 pounds and 6'6" and ran like a 4.4 40. So or 4.5. I mean, I don't know how to do that. So, and then Jared Allen, yeah, I mean, at that point, his game is more of like a motor game. He's a strong guy and he's a motor guy, which, I'm a motor guy, so we got along really well. I mean, he's easy to get along with, but JT was the guy I learned the most from, for sure.
Very cool. Now, I have to ask, unfortunately, for every athlete, there's that end stage. How did you navigate it and really just sort of digest the fact that the phone wasn't ringing anymore, there were no tryouts to be had, and you had to move on? I mean, how did you come to grips with that? And, as you'd already mentioned, you wanted to become a lawyer. So it's not like you had no plan, but just, what was it like to be like, just turn that page and start that new chapter?
Well, it was different from what happens to a lot of guys in my position. So after the Vikings cut me in 2009, that was really, really tough for me because we had just brought in Brett Favre. So I got to see, all the hoopla and fanfare, and it's like, okay, I know I've been watching Brett Favre since I was a kid. This guy can't be that good. And then you see him in practice, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna win the Super Bowl. Like that, that's what I was thinking. Like it is, we are going to win the Super Bowl. He took over that offense, and it was like everything had changed. So now we've got this amazing defense with, AD and Brett Favre. And then I get cut. And I'm like, and the GM, Rick Spillman, great guy. Man, the man cried when he cut me. Like no one has ever shed tears over my departure from a football team. I don't know if you've heard this before, but they might not still do this, but back then they would give you this like sheet of paper with a list of reasons why you may have gotten cut, and then they just check the box on one of them, and they all like amount to like some different version of like you're not good enough, which is kind of hilarious because it's like I was good enough like last week, but now I'm not. All right. Especially like when you get cut during the season. But he told me, look, don't worry, someone's gonna get hurt. We'll bring you back. No worries. Like just stay ready. We'll bring you back. No one got hurt that season, which was kind of surprising. Everyone gets hurt at some point. So I worked out for the Rams. I want to say it was right before Thanksgiving. And the old assistant D-line coach with the Vikings was the D-line coach with the Rams. And so he brought me in. There were 2 other guys. These guys were bigger than me, faster than me, stronger than me. And, it's just like, okay, what's new? Let's do this. Workout goes really well. They come to me and they say, hey, we like you the best. We're going to sign you to a practice squad contract. And I'm like, wait, what? That's not what I came here for. And like, oh yeah, that's what you came here for. Yeah. And I'm like, no, actually, that's not. My agent would never let me get on a plane to come for a practice squad tryout. And I don't even know how I have eligibility left. And they're like, well, you do have eligibility, and that's what we brought you here for. So then, we had to go talk to my agent, and we went through the rules. And turns out, if you don't play more than 8 games in a season, you can be practice squad eligible. Like, even if you played like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. So, and the most games I'd ever played was 8. So they were right, but they also were being super shady because, they didn't say anything about practice squad. And at that moment, I was faced with a decision. It was like, well, and I was about to get married. I was accepted in law school already. And it's like, do I want to sign with a team on practice squad at the end of a season, a team that was one of the worst teams, maybe the worst team in the league at that point? There's going to be a huge overhaul. Coach is probably going to be gone next year. Do I want to do this and then risk having to defer in law school and then go a whole year spending money, not being able to be on a team because I got cut from the Rams? Or do I just want to move on? And when you say, I'm not going to sign this contract, everyone finds out. So that was like a decision I had to make. And we were at a stalemate for a couple of days. Like, the Rams kept me in this hotel room before Thanksgiving. I thought I was going to miss Thanksgiving because they fly you out on a Monday. Well, they fly you on, let's see. Yeah. So they fly you in, you work out on Monday. And so I was there for a few days, and finally, my old D-line coach was like, Otis, like, just sign the contract. I'm like, no, I'm not signing that. Like, you guys lied. You didn't lie, but they did. And now they want to act like it's not a thing. And I think I just need to just, not do this. And my agent was like, I respect that. But that was the end. And no phone calls after that. And I didn't expect anything because I knew the deal. So I was getting ready for law school, and it was hard, man. Like, you've got like this new thing that you're going to do, but man, it's a different life. You go from getting paid to hit people legally to competing in different ways, and it was fun to use my brain more, but you use your brain a lot playing football. And I was fortunate to have something that, I guess culturally people respect. I think, since I've grown older, I don't really care as much about what people think, but when you're younger, it's harder to deal with questions like, well, what are you going to do with your life? Like, what now? Like, now you're nobody. And which is obviously not true, but when you assign your value to what you do, then that's how it feels. And man, so I've just been fortunate and blessed, and I can't, I don't practice law anymore, but like I love that I could. I love what I've learned. I love life, and it does hurt to see a lot of guys not prepared. And I try to do my best when I was playing to kind of mentor guys, help them think about, how they're spending their money, who they give their money to, because, the moment you make that money, you got family. It gets really weird. They're upset because you're not handing them just buckets of cash. They don't even understand that you're not making that much money. I mean, as a guy who's making the minimum, it really wasn't that much money back then. I think I started out making like $250 or something. And I know it sounds crazy, and people are like, "Oh, that's me," but like when it's like essentially cut in half with taxes, and then there's no guarantee that you're going to be on the team the next year. It's tough, and there's more people who are aware of what you have, when other people who make that kind of money, they can just do it under the radar and just sock their money away. So it was the transition was tough, but not. Most of my problems was related to just doing like D-line moves in my sleep. I used to accidentally wake my wife with like head slaps, which, like, she's like, you hit me like in your sleep. And I'm like, I'm sorry. She was like, yeah, you were running in the bed, like on the side, like running. So yeah, I ate, slept, and dreamt about football for almost half my life at that time. So yeah, that's still happened.
That's awesome. But you mentioned that you're no longer practicing law, and just as we wrap up here, um, what interests do you have now? Because I know you're still working, in a related field, but what is Otis spending his time on today?
Yes, yes. So what I'm spending my time on today, I mentioned to you that I do legal recruiting now. So I work with partners at law firms who, are generally happy with where they are, but are looking for something more, looking for more support, maybe more money, more respect. Just like an athlete, a high caliber athlete who wants to level up with a team that's with a better team. And so I help them find that in a discreet way. And you work with law firms that want to develop their bench, and so we meet with them and find out what they need and help them there. So that's one thing I do. And then another thing, I actually started a company a while ago. It does not exist anymore, but it was a sports mentoring program where essentially we were matching college athletes with youth athletes, right? For on the field, off the field training. Um, that was a thing that I had to do. It was an anonymous type deal because of the NCAA rules, and I mean, I'm sure you've seen now that those rules are going to be gone in about a year, a little over a year. But it was a product of me growing up as someone who really was into entrepreneurship. I was a kid that drew like Ninja Turtles and Marvel characters for like money when I was like in elementary school. And then, I knocked on people's doors and I'm like, hey, your grass is a little high. Like I'll cut it front and back for $20. And, you know, t-shirt companies, like just, so, the big game sports academy. So like, there's always this itch to like build something. And then as a lawyer, I worked with people who were building really cool companies that were actually making money, which is kind of fun. And I thought, man, okay, let me try give this another shot. And so I jumped in at startup weekend and made this pitch and like we won, and then we like went to an accelerator and just to explain to people watching and listening who don't know, an accelerator is essentially a business accelerator. So you go in for a 3 or 4 month period, depending on the program. They give you a little seed capital, and they teach you a bunch of stuff to build your company. So the idea is that you're either going to like fly or die. A lot of companies obviously die. Ours died. I went back to practicing law, but I didn't lose that itch, the desire to build things. And I'm a very creative person. So what I'm working on now, and this kind of like I think dovetails. It's similar to some of the stuff that you all are doing with like the coaching, online coaching stuff. Teachable is an awesome resource, and I'm working on a program essentially where I'm talking to kids, young and older athletes about how to win that mental game in sports, because I really do believe it's like almost everything. I mean, it's the way you talk to the coach, the way you interact with the coach. So like building that content up and distributing that and find a way to monetize that. Also, I'm a huge Airbnb like super host type person. Like I don't have any Airbnbs online right now, but I've got like 900 reviews under my belt. Like I was an interior design major before I went to law school, so I love creating beautiful spaces for people and watching like how they interact and like tweaking things and so that's something that I'm interested in getting back into, and also teaching people how to create for themselves. And um, also I sell a device. Sorry, I'm like going on and on,
No,
but
no, the floor is yours.
I sell this device. It's called Beamer. Stands for Electromagnetic Energy Regulation, and essentially it's like a mat that's attached to a box that sends like a signal, electromagnetic signal through the mat, and it goes through your body, and it in effect increases the vasomotion of your blood vessels. So your regular blood vessels, your micro vessels, which essentially increases your blood flow. So more blood flow means more oxygen, more nutrients. You get rid of like the garbage that's in there faster. And it's legit. Like you talk to people about it and some are like, oh, that makes sense. And then other people are just like, it's trash, but it's something that NASA is using. And it's something that, like athletes like Roger Federer and, Rafael Nadal use, and, pro baseball teams, football teams. And it's gotten me to the point where I can recover from injuries quicker. I'm not allowed to say some of the stuff that I'm able to like recover from, but basically I wake up in the morning with energy. I don't drink coffee. I don't need it. I'm 38 years old, and people are just like, how are you able to do these things? And it's just like, well, yeah, this thing right here. So if you want it, I got it. Anyway, so I can go on and on. I'm into a lot of different things, but that's some of the stuff I'm doing. So other than recruiting.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to send me some information on this. Gonna have to do some research.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
well, Otis, the very last piece I wanted to end on is asking you what I think is the most important question, considering everything you've gone through, and that's what's the one single best piece of advice that you would give?
Single best piece of advice that I would give. I would say, so if we're going to put in a sports context, I used to tell myself, play this play as if it's your last. Like, that's how I played all the way back in high school. Like, I imagined that I would never play football again. Like, this could be the last time, the last snap. And it's like, well, what do I want to put on tape with that last snap? Do I want people to see me walking off the field, walking on the field, walking to the huddle? Do I want people to see me pulling up because I think like I was beat and I don't have a chance to recover? Or do I want people to see me relentlessly pursuing the ball, running through the person in front of me, executing on my assignment at a high level, no matter how tired I am? And I think that applies to just life, right? Like,
Definitely.
every day could be my last. So I guess that's the advice I have. Yeah.
I love it. On that note, Otis, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you so much, Steve.